Good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for joining us again on our webinar. If I can come to the first panel, first of all, Paul, Rich and Heather. We're going to be this afternoon just really looking at how we're starting the reopening. Obviously, there's some green shoots coming. We're starting to see people coming into restaurants. We know, obviously, footfall in the city centre is now increasing, and I'm anticipating footfall in the city centre this weekend will be probably back up to 2019 levels if we get some good weather. Let's hope we are going to see summer opening. But if I can come to you first of all, Heather. Heather, yeah. You obviously are running Bruntwood Works, where you create a space where work and lifestyle thrive. And we've been hearing that lifestyle has changed completely, has it, for office workers, because everybody now has been working from home for 15 months. Mm-hmm. And I know that businesses are slowly starting to come back into office space. But is the office space as we know it dead, or how do we really respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good question. It's a debate that we've seen kind of going through the 3 lockdowns, essentially, that we've lived through for the past 14 months now. I think, you know, right at the start in the first lockdown, that there was a novelty factor to it. Everybody was thinking, well, we've got the productivity at home. You know, we might make cost savings on rent and overheads and things like that. Is that something that we can do long term? What we've then started to see, though, is that, you know, by the second lockdown, it was very much a case where I think productivity had started to wane a little bit. I think employers rightfully had a real focus on things like their team's mental health and the culture and the things that you really can't embed outside of everybody being in one space together. And then I'll be really honest, the last lockdown that we've had, that we're coming out of at the moment, I think really cemented the fact that the office is absolutely not dead. If anything, it's a really crucial part of most organisations' success and strategy. So I mean, that has completely been demonstrated by the amount of opportunities and inquiries we've had. If you imagine last year, we were at the point where our inquiries were down to about 50%, and that was a market average, not just for Bruntwood Works. Our inquiries now are 3 times what they were last year. So we're in a really exciting, really comfortable position. We are starting to see the types of products that people are inquiring for change. People are very much valuing flexibility because we've lived through 14 months of uncertainty. You know, so I think good landlords, ourselves being one of them, are really saying, together, how can we work to create a solution that fits with each organisation as an individual in the way that they want to work, and maybe being a little bit more creative about that.
And Bruntwood Works is as a product, isn't it, which isn't, as we would know, sort of the defined workspace. Just tell us a little bit about how you are shaping Bruntwood Works for the new era of post-pandemic.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, we are very fortunate in that, as a forward-thinking developer, you know, our plans haven't really changed because of COVID and because of the pandemic. If anything, a lot of the developments that we've had in the pipeline have been constructed and built throughout this period. So I think a lot of people will find the cities that they left 14 months ago to look and feel very different to when they come back. You know, there's lots of shiny, new, incredible spaces for them to explore, which is really exciting and something to look forward to. Our whole premise is about the fact that people don't go into work to do just that 9 to 5 stint at the office. And I think for the past year, we can all in this call agree that there's so much more outside of that. It's your colleagues' interaction, it's where you spend your lunch break, it's, you know, the little shopping trips in between, and, you know, meeting friends and family afterwards for dinner and drinks. And so we've always been very focused on how retail, lifestyle, hospitality should blend in with an office product. So one of the sites we're very excited about, called the Plaza, over just across the road pretty much from the passport office. It's absolutely brilliant as a concept. You will all know it because the building is quite iconic and has been there for a long time, but the inside will have completely changed. You know, we've got an incredible operator in there that currently run Duke Street markets. They're going to be offering food and drink and amenity, and we've just got that full product stack. So if people want to come in and do a pay-as-you-go co-work, they want to sit down for an hour, just bring their laptop, they can do that. If they want to be in 3 days a week, they can do that. If they want a flexible serviced product, right up through to traditional leased and everything in between, you know, that's what we've been working on.
You just mentioned sort of the end of the 9 to 5. So will the plaza be operating on or what type of hours will that be? Will that be recognising the fact that people actually are productive in the evenings right through until late night? So you're going to be open 24/7 there?
Maybe not 24/7. I mean, our customers do have 24/7 access. However, in terms of the full hosting and things like that, we've definitely been doing the shifts so that people are starting earlier, and then there's a later shift where people are finishing a little bit later as well. The operators within the site all have alcohol licenses and will be set up to be serving food and drink after hours as well and after the work day. So I think it will feel very different, but in a really exciting way, because we've got to think over the next few months, people are going to be a lot more cautious as well. People, especially getting public transport in, might be leaving earlier or coming in later and shifting their day, because for one, it might be risk of exposure and just trying to minimise that, you know, with busyness and things like that. But on the other hand as well, I think this period has been really interesting when we do look at our working patterns as individuals. And I think employers are recognising a much higher need for flexibility within that.
Yeah, just interesting to pick up on that point about flexibility. How do you think employers are going to respond to that?
I mean, we're seeing a big shift, and I think we'd all started to see pre-COVID anyway, and move towards agile and flexible working. So the idea that people could work from home a few days a week if that suited them and their lifestyle, I think it was bubbling under. If, you know, some people had adopted it, others were a little bit slower. COVID has obviously forced that into play. We are very much seeing customers come to us and say, we're thinking of coming back 3 days a week with 2 days working from home. That seems to be the kind of the average and the standard that we're hearing. How long that will last for, again, nobody can really predict at the moment. That does seem like the dream situation of, you know, allowing people to have the best of both. But whether or not that will be the same in 6 months' time, if COVID is a thing of the past and isn't something that we're worrying about anymore, you know, who knows. What we are seeing though is that a lot of employees from the recruitment side of things are really valuing flexible working. So I think employers will have to be seen to offer that.
Great, thanks, Heather. And Rich, if I can just come to you. I mean, Heather's just talked there about sort of an alcohol license within an office building. Are you going to be offering office space within any of your venues?
Well, we actually already do. There's office space above the merchant, and it's obviously, you know, it's a good use of kind of non-licensable space. So the combination is, you know, attractive. I think Liverpool. There's some really interesting developments actually across the road from us. Surge are doing a big development on the corner of Parr Street, which looks like a fantastic development. But I was actually speaking to the guys from Duke Street Market last week, and they said that your development looks incredible, and that it's gonna be a real. I used to live out that way, and I think it'd be a real bonus to that part of town. But yeah, in terms of what we're doing, we're noticing quite a shift at the minute in between customer behavior. So through the lockdowns, midweek trade was up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, where people were maybe on furlough, could go out for a drink and a slice of pizza or whatever on a Monday or Tuesday night, where maybe they wouldn't have previously, if they were working from home, not having to commute, those kind of things. And what we're seeing now in the last week or two is more of a shift back to more traditional kind of quieter Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. People are obviously moving back into work, and we're getting back up to kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday peak trade, and that shift's happened in the last kind of fortnight, and I can see it on both in Manchester and in Liverpool. We can see that, but that's definitely happening quite quickly.
Rich, if I can come and ask you a few questions about obviously how you're preparing for reopening, but one of the key ways that you are helping us and helping the country, in fact, around reopening was those scientific experiments you took part in, and obviously the nightclubs up at Bramley Moor. How did, from an operator's perspective, how was that?
It was complex in that the DCMS and the people who the scientist end of it all had an aim, but they couldn't really kind of give us all the information at once. So the process of them working out what data they needed to extrapolate from it and how that filtered down to us at an operational level of delivering the shows was quite complicated. If they had if they'd kind of shared all that with us at the start, but I think unfortunately for them that was a moving target. So by the time we actually got to working out what they actually needed, we could have delivered them a really fast and quick solution for that. There was also, there was a lot of barriers in our way where we couldn't use our regular ticket outlet, and we couldn't use. So obviously, it was all one ticket per person because it was all connected directly to individual testing, and the GDPR issues around matching regular ticket information with health information was probably the biggest complication that we had to overcome. Could have been simplified, I think, in retrospect, but by the Wednesday, I think before the shows, we kind of had it under control. But the 3 weeks running up was quite, to pull off those shows with 3 weeks notice was one of the harder things we've had to do. But the good thing was that we had the best of the best at our disposal from the security teams. We had all the best managers, the bar teams, production teams, all of the best of the industry who were there to kind of try and help everyone reopen. We're all on hand to help, and we had this amazing support from Liverpool City Council. And in retrospect, on the day of the actual shows, they were probably the easiest and best run shows we've had, and that's over a 20-year period. And I think it's just because the willingness of the city to cooperate and collaborate, and everyone pulled together. There was a lot going on. We had an anti-vaxxers march in Liverpool on the Saturday, who were talking about coming down and protesting the ingress of the show. We had, a huge amount of abuse personally as operators for getting involved with the government. We had, all sorts of problems. But in hindsight, it kind of all just fell away. And what was important was it all came together. The results were fantastic. The Sefton Park show with Festival Public was also fantastic. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's got any questions on any of that, let me know. It was quite the experience, to be honest.
But the key thing from all of that is clearly that the data is looking good for us being able to reopen from 21st of June, isn't it? And I know we were talking just before we went online about the potential demand for shows.
There's no question the demand for shows is there. I think that really the only thing that is holding us back is the uncertainty from government in terms of whether we're going to open on June the 21st or not. And I think that the reality, I think what's coming down the line is that the new NHS app, not the old one, the new one that's just been released, there will be some level of certification for people, for events over 1,000 cap, and that comes with various political and sort of economic issues. But putting it simply, I think the burden of cost of testing will be on the government, which is the biggest question that's been out there from an operator's perspective. If everyone has to be tested, who's paying for it? I think it's going to be a simple self-certified LFT test, which is just what you can pick up in the chemist and do yourself at home, really simple. And the system will be you do the test yourself and you upload it yourself. There will be some onus then on the customers to not falsify or to try and game the system. If people have had a vaccine, I think this app will then relate to that. And if you've had COVID before, it'll have that information on there. How the government are going to actually unroll that and make that work is another story. They obviously have plans, and I think we will hear probably the week before. I would say around the start of June, first week of June. I think we'll probably hear something. That's my impression from what I've heard so far. I think there's been a huge amount of. I've been dealing with Michael Kill from the NTIA a lot. The problem really with implementing something like that, as broad as that, across a business which is so segmented into, how do you discriminate? How do you say you've got to go into a nightclub, which is 300 capacity here, but you've got a pub next door which is 300 capacity, which can play music and people can dance? And how do you discriminate against ticketed events? At what capacity does it start to make a difference? Infinitely complicated. So they've had quite a job on their hands, working out how to mitigate and make people safe at large scale events. And of course, everyone was tested before they got into our event. So the mitigation and the testing was there beforehand. As the prevalence of the COVID deteriorates, of course, the risk deteriorates, but we just don't know. We just don't know what's ahead of us. So it's kind of an interesting biting point for the whole industry, really.
Good, great. Thanks for that, Rich. But Paul, if I can come to you, Africa Oye is as we know, is the UK's largest free celebration of African music and culture. And this city missed it so much last year, but we are looking forward very much to you coming back. So tell us about how it's been for you, for the performers, for people who've been locked away for a whole year.
I think that for us, it's been an interesting journey. I think the first part, when we had to cancel last year's festival around April time, and luckily we were in a position where we hadn't paid a lot of deposits, so the losses were minimal, luckily, because of the timing of the festival. We managed to secure employment for all our staff, and what we had to do is basically change our outputs last year to become more digital. We've been doing a lot of online stuff, a lot of radio, a lot of podcasts, and we've also been doing education stuff, which is part of our remit anyway. So although we are primarily a music festival, there was a lot of other work that we do, which we were able to continue to do and just change our strategy in the last year. In terms of moving forward, this year, it's not going to be possible to do OEA in the park as we normally do it, because simply there's still a lot of unanswered questions around free non-ticketed events, as Rich kind of alluded to there. Yes, we can have these test events which are ticketed and fenced and protected, but how do we go about doing an open plan festival, in a park with no tickets at a time like this? It's too early to be able to test anything like that. And I think we made a decision at the beginning of the year to have 3 scenarios. One was to do the festival as we normally do it, which isn't going to be possible. The third scenario was to have an online version of the festival if we went back into lockdown and if this Indian variant of the disease become more prevalent. And the second option is, which we are going to go for, is to carry on our online offer, but also to start doing some smaller events in smaller venues around the Baltic and in the city centre. Anything from starting at 100 cap, going right up to sort of 600-700, moving into the winter months and early next year. And then hopefully by the end of this year, we should have more information on stuff like free events and how, or if they're going to be able to take place. Because we might even be in a situation where, the government puts legislation down where we won't be able to have open plan events. I don't think it's going to come to that, but we never know what's going to happen, so we have to look into it. The other things which I'm really seeing, when I was talking about doing the events in the winter and stuff, I'm inundated with submissions for people to play either at the festival or events throughout the year. I'm not having that at the moment, and what a lot of people don't realise is, in terms of international acts, although we're pretty much quite down the road in vaccination process. Countries like France and Germany and stuff like this are nowhere near as far down the line as us, which means that a lot of the African artists come into Europe for a period of time and then tour from there. That's not happening at the moment because obviously there's no international travel. So that has a massive impact on us because most of the artists we're bringing are international. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then also you have the situation of, if there was international travel, would there be COVID protocol? And, would we ever have to house our artists in a hotel for 2 weeks, which is probably going to cost more than their fee. So there's so many intricacies which make it really impossible to do what we normally do this year. It's been interesting I've been looking at the pilot events and looking at the figures, and it is, refreshing that things seem to be getting better. And I think it's so important for the economy of Liverpool. I think all of us noticed, quite apparently when everything stopped, how important, the events industry is and the leisure industry is to Liverpool in terms of the knock-on effects. And also in terms of the festivals, what we need to look at and events industry in general is how many staff have we lost, for people who haven't been working for 2 years. There's going to be a lot of production companies that have gone to the wayside, and we might not get them back. And also, people like tour managers and, all the key staff that make events happen, what's going to be the knock-on effect of that? And do we need to look at, putting some a call out and getting some training done so that we have got these, we haven't got these gaps in the staff moving forward. So it's been an interesting couple of years, but I think that we've adapted accordingly. And it's, we've made sure that our brand is still prevalent, but, we are working blind, and, it's all about just taking things on a week by week basis. It sounds like a cliche, but it's so, I think it's so important in what we do at the moment.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, clearly one of the things we need to do as a sector is to see how we can continue to support you. And it's been through COVID, obviously, we all realise how interconnected we are, not just the city is very interconnected, but particularly this sector in the visitor economy. And it's really how we can ensure that you're given support, and all of those various members that you were talking about, that the various parts of the team that deliver those events, how we can ensure that you're supported so that when we come out of this COVID into a world where we can have large-scale free events, that you're actually still there and delivering for us. So.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think that we will definitely take place next year, but it just, I don't know in what guise. I don't know if we're going to need to be ticketed. I hope not. There could still be a situation where we're ticketed and still, free, or people pay a nominal fee, because I think that's the beauty of Africa. I think there's a lot of events that people pay for, which is great. But I think it's special for the city to have, at least one event where people can see, international music all come together, for this weekend celebration. And I think it's important for the city, the diversity of the city, the culture of the city as well.
Yeah, it is. Thanks for that, Paul, Rich and Heather. Please do keep your questions coming in and the chat. But if I hand across to Chris for the second part of our webinar.
Thanks very much, Bill. Yeah, I think that last panel conversation, I think, highlights some of the challenges that we still have going forward. And, particularly, we really miss those exciting events like Africa OEA and some of the stuff you do, Rich. It's a really sobering thought in many ways. And I think as we enter into this part of the panel, I think we do so recognising the impact that COVID has had on the visitor economy in Liverpool over the last year. latest stats tell us that is now about £2 billion that we've lost. We're now going back to economic figures that we last saw back in 2001, 2002, and allied to that, nearly 20,000 jobs, which have been lost from the sector as well. And already businesses are struggling to find the replacements for those as they try to rebuild the sector. So my three panelists here are really important in the context of creating the demand for the great product that we have here. And maybe I'll start with yourself, Angie. I mean, you deal with a number of really important assets in the city: cruise liner terminal, St George's Hall. So let's maybe just go to the cruise liner terminal first and foremost, because you welcome back for the first time for what seems a long time the Viking Venus on Monday. So how did that go for you, and what can we look forward to from future cruise line visits during the summer, and maybe also the fact that they will maybe not be quite visiting in the same way they would normally do?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, the visit went extremely well, because it's fair to say we've been focusing on recovery of the cruise industry for the past 12 months. Everything that we've been doing has been about protocols, and the power of partnership has never been more important. These cruise lines cannot stand alone without the support of the ports. And so we formed a number of groups so that we are working together to deliver the safe return of cruise. And we've got 80 ships calling this summer, a combination of day visits and embarkation visits. Whilst that's less than what we would have had, 120 calls, there's ports in the UK that have got 0 calls. One of the key selling points outside of us being a fantastic destination was our ability to deliver COVID testing. The cruise lines absolutely wanted a safe pair of hands, and because my team led on the implementation of COVID testing since the military were here, we just had that expertise, and the two have to operate hand in glove with testing all of the passengers that embark in Liverpool. Whilst the economic impact won't be the same as in previous years, because the passengers just can't move freely off the ship, they can go off on excursion bubbles, so they can go to a controlled environment or attraction, and quite a lot of the passengers on board Viking on Monday took that opportunity, and that's something that we really want to develop more. But, it's not all bad news. We have opportunity presented to us. We've got Disney and MSC embarking in Liverpool for the first time ever. That is purely because of our ability to carry out COVID testing. So in my mind, we get it right this year. We show them that we can deliver a seamless experience, and that's a business that we can secure in the future that would never have really considered Liverpool. So I think the other opportunity that cruisers bring, for me, they just bring their own energy to the waterfront, and that attracts spectators and visitors. And it was just glorious on Monday to see people back on our waterfront, just observing these ships and wanting to be in and amongst it. So I think, there's a civic pride associated with cruise passenger shipping in Liverpool. The media were very kind to us. It was all positive. And hopefully, this summer, if anything, will give people a reason to be at our waterfront and spend money in the wider visitor economy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, Angie. I mean, they've done a brilliant job there in terms of building the reputation of Liverpool as a cruise destination. And I think you're 100% right that the opportunities, even under these constrained times, will do no harm in terms of us building on that great work so far. In terms of, the passengers that came, did you get any kind of feedback from them about, how they'd found the experience and how they'd found the cruise and how they'd found the city?
They loved it, and they considered themselves quite pioneering. They were British passengers, fiercely independent, it's fair to say. And we did some vox pops with them, and they were just reassuring to other passengers or people who were maybe considering booking. The experience on board is still fabulous. The protocols that are in place are really robust, but the cruise industry is just fantastic at implementing things where people don't feel they're being managed or controlled. So the experience on board is still second to none. It's very safe. Every passenger has to have a double vaccination as well as a test. So the ship is in effect a bubble, a very safe bubble. So I think, they've controlled the numbers on board, so they're keeping kind of passenger numbers down at the moment to a maximum of 1,000. So people are getting to enjoy these spaces and keep them to themselves as well. That will hopefully from the 21st of June change, and we can get those passenger numbers up a little bit. But yeah, it's just been very positive, and it's staycations, as we call it, British passengers on ships staying in British waters. So domestic tourism only, so very safe at the moment.
So, and I mean, what we do know during the time of COVID is that a lot of our businesses have come up with really new, innovative and creative ways. They've pivoted, they've changed direction, come up with great ideas. And you're no stranger to that in terms of the work that you're doing at St George's Hall and your new digital attraction. So tell us a little bit about that and what we can look forward to from that.
Yeah, thanks. So I look after the 3 city halls, Croxteth, Town Hall and St George's. And I think like any busy venue, you get stuck in a cycle of just delivery, and you never have that time to catch your breath and go, what are we about here? And the future of St George's Hall, is really about capturing new audiences. We know people love it. They love to take a photograph of the outside of it, but how do we get people to use that space? It belongs to the city and they should be able to use it. So we applied for funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund and got a really great kind of funding to create a digital immersive attraction that will just bring St George's Hall and what it means to the social fabric of Liverpool. It will just bring it to life. We've got a BAFTA award-winning writer who's created the narrative. We're in the development stage now and we're hoping to open end of July, early August. For us, we're going to use it as an anchor to attract domestic tourism back into Liverpool so that it's something new for people to see. But we're so excited about it. I think it's going to be quite an emotional experience as well. It's Liverpool's social history told through a story. So yeah, we're really looking forward to that. And I think it's just great that people will get to experience St George's Hall on the inside rather than just look at it from the outside.
Great. So you've got your hands full then, Angie. Hands full of stuff to do. That's just great.
yeah, just a little bit, but I love it.
Okay. Now, John, if I move to you at the airport, I mean, the airport has been a huge asset and continues to be a huge asset to the city and the wider city region. You've done a brilliant job there in terms of bringing in new routes, developing new routes, creating a lot of inbound traffic. People sometimes think it's only outbound, but you brought a lot of inbound, a lot of great routes that you've connected the city to that we've been able to maximize opportunities to grow audiences. But you've had a significant challenge in that space, haven't you, in terms of the kind of hokey-cokey approach of government around reds, greens and ambers and whatever. So how do you see the lie of the land at the moment for the airport, and where do you see the kind of future direction going, which, as I say, is so important for us being able to attract our European markets back?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think, everyone's suffered, and I think certainly in aviation, we probably suffered the first and quickly, and the lag to our recovery is going to be significantly decided by government policy, and I appreciate what people have said about large events. I would say we're not really on a roadmap, unlike other businesses. We have restarted, which is positive, but we don't really have any guidelines on when normality comes back to travel and route development. I think the way I look at it, last year for all of us was horrific. And if we put it into context for the airport, we've had 3 or 4 years at 5 million passengers. Last year we had 500,000. So the impact on us financially has been incredibly large, with very limited support to keep us going from the government. But then you start to look at what does restart look like, and how do we move out of this? And I think, like everyone in this city region, we've looked at what we do and try and do things differently, but maintain really what we're good at and give us the best opportunity to recover whenever that is. So we've worked really hard to maintain people and skills throughout the challenges, and we're just ready to go, really. I mean, if I look at 17th of May, 11 days ago, was the official international travel restart, as the government called it. In reality, it allowed us to fly some flights. In the last sort of 3 months, we've had 30 flights a week, which compared to normals, we normally have 400 or 500. in and out. We had 46 last week, so you can see it's starting to move forward. And this week we had 60, next week we've got 90, and you can see flights coming back in. But as you rightly say, Chris, the red, green, amber confusion and allowances is going to impact how quickly we get back to anywhere near what we need from an airport and for the city region to bring people in and obviously send people on holiday or back home or out on business. And the impact we see, obviously we had Faro announced as a green destination last week. That started to fly more. We got capacity in quite quickly. This week I think we'll be fairly positive on that flight because of half term. But really, having amber countries and the messaging from the government to say, while we've said you have to test 3 or 4 times, we're still telling you not to go. That's really unhelpful for us in terms of recovery. We've got flights to Spain, to Greece, all over the place that flying out with 6 or 7 people on it, and that's not sustainable. So I think that's where we are. So if I look forward, the critical date for the short term is the next announcement of the green list, which was due today but is more likely to be Monday, and that I think will be fairly limited in terms of its output into the green list. We might get a few more outbound markets, but I don't see many of the markets we rely on from an inbound point of view coming back that quickly. So really for us, to have any normal summer, the 28th of June is literally D-Day. That's the next review, and I think the route towards normality driven by the European vaccine rates and case numbers, hopefully in another month, will give us some large routes and destinations for our normal summer to restart. But that's kind of the negative side of it, Chris. But when you look at the opportunities, and Angie probably summed up it very well in terms of getting people in this year to see what we're about and getting them in. I think the positive thing for our airport is our business model hasn't really changed. Yeah. We haven't lost airlines. We haven't really lost any capacity, if I'm honest. Although this year will be severely limited, the airlines that we had before COVID are still here, still strong, still growing. We've announced new routes even in the downturns. We've actually got a lot more capacity, hopefully COVID restrictions allowing, coming in next year. So our recovery back to a 5 million passenger airport should be very, very quick, and that's really positive, and it will give us opportunities that we've never had before to bring in new destinations and probably new airlines over time. Everyone's now looking at their business models, and ours works. So airlines are keen to talk us. We've had conversations with airlines that would never have had pre-COVID, if I'm honest. Things that haven't quite come off but are valuable to us as an airport, but certainly for the visitor economy into the city, they could be great. We've just announced Stockholm, Rome, all of these cities that have or haven't had links in the past will be there. We'll probably announce more in the next 6 months, if I'm honest. Yeah. But they're ready to go. That's all I can say. They're ready to go.
Yeah, and I think, John, I can pick up what you're saying, because I know even looking at the opportunities with Belfast and as they've been running around 80% capacity, been really good in terms of through that period. I think and brilliant that even at this time you're announcing new routes like Rome and Stockholm, and that's really confidence boosting stuff. Yeah. What do you? We're having this conversation the other day with rail operators about what the impact of the changes in COVID will be on things like season tickets, on first class travel, and hoping that the days of charging somebody 300 quid to go to London for a day will disappear. But what do you see? What kind of feedback do you get from the airline industry about what they think they will have learned from the COVID pandemic, and what they may well do differently going forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you think you see it in other places, don't you, where prices have gone up to try and almost recover revenues, and as an airport we obviously we will play around with certain things, but airlines at the minute are in volume mode, so the prices will naturally go up. The more green countries and the more demand comes back, the prices will go up. But right now, they're effectively dumping prices into the market to try and stimulate demand, which is good for the consumer and good for us. I think, in terms of how they move forward, like I said, that there will be casualties to this. The business travel, which, we have, enough business travel to Belfast and Dublin. And as you say, Chris, Belfast has been running for the last 4 or 5 weeks at 80% load factor. You know, the capacity on Belfast doubled this week versus last week. So that we know that's going to come back, and that's, you know, driven by business, students, football, all the things that we've got in the past, which will come back. But certain traffic, you know, that we don't have will struggle to come back. So airlines, not necessarily ones we work with, will have to adapt the business models. You know, that having a low cost base case really is a positive thing for the next couple of years, because that's, you know, while it doesn't necessarily connect you to the world, can connect you to, you know, right now I've got 85 bases. You can fly to pretty much any city you want. Same with Wizz, same with EasyJet. But airlines, you know, the ones that Manchester have, I think will come under serious pressure. So, you know, the reason I say our business model hasn't changed is it hasn't, but other airports and airlines will have to change their business model because it doesn't work anymore. And that's going to be a big problem, I think, looking at how airports grow. And for us, it probably gives us opportunities to go and try and get back into conversations that normally we lose out to Manchester just because it's Manchester. And that's the reality of life in the past. But now, you know, airlines will look at, you know, in one way, having Manchester 40 miles up the road is never great, but this opportunity that the market's seen as, you know, as one, and Liverpool's a strong market in its own right. So can we get routes or airlines that we would never have got on the same type of deals? Probably yes. So, you know, I can't see 3 flights to Dubai and 2 flights to Abu Dhabi going every day from Manchester for a long time. But, you know, the volume game and the pricing will be there for outbound travel and inbound travel. And, you know, the airlines are so important to us for inbound point of view, including the smaller ones like, you know, Logan Air have got a bigger presence here now with Derry and Isle of Man being announced and flying now. You know, Videro back on Bergen when football starts. Stockholm will be, you know, a very good inbound market, we think. So the opportunities are there, and I think it's given us a chance to be a bit smarter with what we ask for. You know, to look at markets that we need, both as an airport and as an economy. So.
Yeah, so I think, you know, very interesting, John. I mean, I think, like you say, I mean, I think it's going to be quite, I think your business model is probably better and well suited to take on the changing nature of the airline industry. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how it plays out. But I think I would certainly say that you're looking at this more from the opportunity perspective, and you can get through the challenges. And hopefully, if government can start to get a bit more joined up around their lighting system, we might start to be able to see European visitors back sooner rather than later. Yeah. But if I finally and last but certainly not least, Faye, in the same context of what we were talking about there with Angie and John, the ACC campus, we've become accustomed to. We've looked forward to welcoming the huge concerts, the exhibitions, the major conferences that you've delivered there, which have provided so much catalytic opportunities for the visitor economy. And you too have had, you know, significant challenges in that space over the last year or so. So, you know, as we begin, you know, and you also got, you know, obviously participated in the pilot events as well. So as you begin, hopefully we begin to emerge into a post-pandemic era. How are you seeing things at ACC? What's the order book looking like, and what's your kind of aspirations and hopes for the future?
Yeah, good question. Really positive, to be honest, Chris. I think like Angie said, you know, we've spent the last year not only supporting the city's pandemic response, but equally being incredibly focused on recovery, because we are such a big demand generator for the visitor economy and a role that we take massively seriously. So I think we've got 2 real strengths that we're playing that will hopefully allow us to not only retain our market share, but also grow market share going forwards. So first of those, I guess, is flexibility. So, you know, we've completely changed the way that we contract and work with clients to make sure that it's very much a partnership approach, and that we can have that sort of flexibility that's needed in uncertain times. We are really lucky because we've got a fantastic product on the waterfront. You know, we've got 3 interconnected large venues. That means that we can offer that flexibility. So if a client needs more space, if social distancing means that the footprint needs to change for a short while yet, then we can absolutely accommodate that. So we've got lots of contingency plans in place for clients over the summer. That means that we can hopefully still host those events, even if something changes in line of the roadmap on the 21st. We've also launched a hybrid offer. And whilst, you know, we are not seeing any big change in terms of business events moving to virtual events moving forwards, I think we've come full circle in terms of that opportunity. It does mean, again, that there's a bit more confidence that if, certainly in the short term, numbers will be a bit less than the norm. So we might be sitting at more, let's say 75% of what pre-COVID levels were, but we've now got that additional product in terms of our offering as well. That means that our clients can continue to capture that side of the market, at least for the next 6 months or so. So flexibility, I think, really key, and that's a real strength. And then confidence. So it's all about confidence building. And I think, again, we're really well placed as a city to play that, to keep attracting people. So we've kept our core team on, and we've managed to trade throughout the pandemic. We have not undervalued the really talented team of people that we've got that are experienced industry professionals, unlike some of our competitors of other cities. So that puts us in a really strong position in terms of partnering with clients and getting back to hosting live events. As a venue, we've been operational throughout the pandemic as well. So we've operated as a PPE and a food distribution hub. And I think that massively demonstrates that we know how to host COVID secure operations. Not that that's in doubt at all across the industry, but that's a real strength. And then I think, as has already been mentioned today, we've played a huge role in terms of the pilots and trying to help the government with that next important step on the roadmap. But also, if you remember back pre-Christmas time, of course, we hosted a number of socially distanced events pre-Christmas. So we're not only sitting here as a business that says, theoretically, we know how to do this. We've actually got a proven track record. And that means that our order book, when we talk about business events from September onwards, is currently looking strong, provided that the roadmap goes to plan on the 21st of June. And I think confidence is high on that at the moment. Then we are in a really good position to start to welcome a large number of events and visitors back into the Liverpool City region.
So it would be fair to say, Faye, wouldn't it? I think, although obviously we lost a lot of business, obviously in that pre-COVID, in that post, pre-COVID and during COVID, a lot of that didn't actually get lost. It shifted dates in terms of the fact, so it's a lot of it still is coming to the city just at different times. But that also creates challenges, doesn't it, in terms of available space in the calendar to take in new incoming inquiries. So how are you kind of balancing on that, and how are you kind of finding the confidence of those organisers now to continue to maintain, to hold the business on the books rather than cancel?
Yeah, good question. So our strategy has absolutely been around client retention. COVID is nobody's fault. It's something that, we're having to work through together as a team, as a partnership with our clients. So our strategy has absolutely been about one-off postponement and trying to find the right solution and the right time at which those events can return safely. Clients value more so than ever face-to-face events. Virtual events just do not work for most of clients' objectives. So our order book, as I say, is looking strong. Yes, there is risk and there is some nervousness around the 21st of June. But if there are other restrictions or other things that we need to operate to as an industry and as a venue, then Liverpool is exceptionally well placed, particularly on the back of the pilots, to adapt to those quickly and to give the support to clients. So I say it is a challenge. We've only got one venue to sell, and it's a nice problem to have when you're trying to work out how to fit everybody in. And there are some gaps still, when we look at sort of post-Christmas period. But lead time wise, there is absolutely still time to sell those spaces, and working in partnership with the city. We've got a fantastic offer. We've got a really good product. We are very competitively priced. So yeah, it's looking, fingers crossed. I think we're feeling positive and things are looking strong at the moment.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, isn't it, just to see how the whole thing around hybrid and the mix of physical versus virtual, and how that's all going to play out, isn't it? It's going to be I suppose a lot of that will depend on whether it becomes a viable cost alternative to do a hybrid event as opposed to a physical event. So it's going to be interesting space, isn't it, as that develops? Yeah,
I think we've all got used to Zooming, haven't we, over the last 12 months. But I go back to saying that the value of face-to-face events is appreciated more than ever. And I think even at government level, one of the real successes of the pilot event, we've done a lot of work in trying to educate the government about the economic value of events. But actually what's recognised more so than ever is the value of events from a social side, in terms of people's enjoyment, in terms of happiness, in terms of well-being. And I think there's been a real light bulb moment around that as well, which is hugely important, because we all want to see people back in into Liverpool, don't we? And we all want to get people back into the hotels, into the bars, into the restaurants. And I just think we are really well placed as a city, not only to build back, but genuinely to build back better and to take this as a platform for growth moving forwards.
Okay, great. Now, just before I hand back to Bill, we'd also, you know, I know you're coming up for the opportunity for the convention centre to win best in UK again, which an award that you've won many times, and we, you know, Liverpool Convention Bureau will also be going for those awards as well. So we wish you every success with that, and hope we can count on the votes from the participants today for that, Faye. Yeah. So in handing back to yourself, Bill, I mean, we launched our campaign Get Away to It All, which I think if we listen to the panelists today, I think basically says what it says on the tin. Yeah, we've got a brilliant product here. If any city is going to basically be resilient and recover effectively, I think it's Liverpool. So back to yourself, Bill.
Thanks for that, Chris, and great to hear again from you, Angie, John, and Faye. Just to say that the links for the ability to vote are on board now within the chat function. And one other thing, obviously, as we start to pull out of COVID and the recovery starts to take place, it's very important for us to provide the data through to see how that recovery is working. So if Alvaro will also share the data for the quarterly economic survey, excuse me, from the Chamber of, from Liverpool Chamber, so we can understand how businesses are starting to rebuild, but also clearly that the impact of COVID is not just going to be removed overnight as our sector reopens. There is some long-term systemic issues that we need to resolve. It's very important, actually, is one of the impacts that I'm hearing at this moment in time is the question about skills, and we're picking that up through the Visitor Economy Board in the city at this moment in time, because I know that the demand seems to have been switched on and people are coming back into the restaurants and hopefully back into hotels and events, but there is a big issue around those 20,000 jobs that have gone out of the sector just in the city alone, and actually where people have found alternate work and are not coming back into the sector. And that's a key issue that we need to be very careful about, because it will impact us as we move forward. There's a couple of questions within our Q&As today, particularly one about how do we get all the citizens of Liverpool involved in shaping the future for the benefit. And I would say very importantly is how we connect with the communities in the city. Yeah, a lot of the work in the visitor economy is on the city centre, but we do need to work with all communities. And I'm delighted that the new cabinet member for culture tourism is on board and is watching the webinar today. And I know Councillor Harry Doyle wants to be very involved and is already coming and being will be very instrumental in working with this sector as we move forward and we connect all the citizens of this city for the benefit of all. But just to say that this is our 16th webinar of the period, not that we're counting, but just to say that hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything moves to reopening as we think it will do by now, the numbers are looking good. Health stats are looking good. Most importantly, the number of hospitalizations is the one figure that's very important, and that's very low. In fact, earlier this week, there were no new hospitalizations in the city, so that's really good to see. So our next event will be an in-person event that we will show, especially with all of our loyal attendees who have been with us right since the beginning. We look forward to that towards the end of June, so keep watch out for that. Have a great weekend. The weather is looking good. Please do get out and about into the city right across. Enjoy our cultural events, enjoy our hospitality venues. Have a great weekend. Thank you all, Heather, Rich, and Paul, for being part of the panel today. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, everyone.